What if I told you America's greatest fortunes were built before the rules even existed? Before skyscrapers, before modern laws, a few men quietly gained power that could shape an entire nation. They weren't just rich, they controlled oil, steel, and transportation, and their decisions changed millions of lives. This is the forgotten era that created America's first billionaires and the hidden cost behind their rise. In the early years of American industrial growth, success was measured not by fame, but by financial influence. Long before modern corporations, social media celebrities, or technology giants, the United States entered a powerful period of transformation where industry, transportation, and manufacturing reshaped everyday life. This was a time when ambition mattered more than background, and opportunity often favored those willing to take risks in a rapidly changing nation. During the mid-19th century, America was expanding at an unprecedented speed. Railroads stretched across vast lands, connecting distant towns and opening new markets. Factories rose near growing cities, replacing agricultural economies with industrial production. Steam power, mechanized tools, and mass manufacturing changed how goods were created and distributed. At the same time, millions of immigrants arrived from Europe and other regions, hoping to escape poverty and find stability. These newcomers became the backbone of factories, railways, and mines, fueling the country's economic engine. Unlike modern times, laws and regulations were still developing. There were few rules governing large businesses, limited oversight of working conditions, and little restriction on how industries could expand. This environment allowed ambitious individuals to build massive enterprises at a speed rarely seen before. Innovation moved faster than government policy, and economic power often grew without clear limits. For entrepreneurs, this created opportunity. For society, it created both growth and tension. As wealth increased, so did inequality. While industrial leaders accumulated enormous fortunes, many workers faced long hours, unsafe conditions, and uncertain wages. Cities grew crowded, and living conditions varied widely between wealthy neighborhoods and working-class areas. The nation appeared to be thriving, yet beneath the surface, serious social challenges were emerging. These contrasts defined the era and shaped public debate for decades to come. This period later became known as the Gilded Age, a term that reflected its dual nature. On the outside, America John D. Rockefeller and Industrial Organization. John D. Rockefeller became one of the most influential figures in American business history. not because he invented oil, but because he transformed how an entire industry was organized. In the late 19th century, the oil business was chaotic, unpredictable, and inefficient. Small refineries competed aggressively, prices fluctuated constantly, and waste was common. Rockefeller saw opportunity in order. Instead of focusing on discovery, he focused on structure, efficiency, and consistency. Through his company, Standard Oil, he worked to bring every major part of the oil process under coordinated management. This included refining crude oil, transporting it through railroads and pipelines, storing it safely, and distributing it to markets across the country. By organizing these steps into one connected system, Rockefeller reduced costs and increased reliability. Standard Oil's methods allowed products like kerosene to become cheaper and more widely available, helping fuel homes, businesses, and industries during America's rapid expansion. Rockefeller believed that competition often led to waste and instability. He argued that cooperation and consolidation created efficiency, reduced duplication, and benefited consumers through lower prices. This belief shaped how he built his business. Standard Oil invested heavily in better equipment, improved refining techniques, and large-scale operations that smaller competitors could not easily match. As a result, the company grew rapidly and became a dominant force within the industry. Rockefeller's approach reflected the broader industrial mindset of the era, where scale and organization were seen as keys to national progress. As Standard Oil expanded, its influence sparked widespread public discussion. Supporters viewed Rockefeller as a symbol of innovation and disciplined management, crediting his methods with stabilizing an essential industry. Critics, however, raised concerns about market concentration and fairness. These debates played a significant role in shaping public understanding of corporate power. Over time, discussions surrounding Standard Oil contributed to the development of economic regulations designed to balance growth with competition. Rockefeller's career became closely linked to the evolving relationship between business and government in the United States. Beyond his role in industry, Rockefeller also became known for his approach to wealth and responsibility. Later in life, he dedicated a large portion of his fortune to philanthropy. He supported education, scientific research, public health initiatives, and medical institutions. Organizations funded by his donations helped advance research, improve healthcare, and expand access to learning. Rockefeller believed that wealth carried a responsibility to benefit society, and his charitable efforts reflected that philosophy. His foundations and institutions continued to operate long after his retirement, influencing generations beyond his own lifetime. Rockefeller's story illustrates how large-scale organization reshaped early American industry. His focus on efficiency, coordination, and long-term planning changed how businesses operated and how markets developed. While opinions about his methods have varied across time, his impact on industrial management is undeniable. The systems he helped popularize influenced modern corporate structures and demonstrated the power of organization in driving economic growth. John D. Rockefeller remains a central figure in understanding how America's first billionaires shaped the foundations of the modern economy. Andrew Carnegie and the Rise of Steel. Andrew Carnegie's journey reflects the rapid growth of American industry during the 19th century and the opportunities created by a nation in transition. Born into a modest family in Scotland, Carnegie immigrated to the United States at a young age, with limited resources and little formal education. Like many newcomers of the time, he entered the workforce early, taking on various jobs that introduced him to the fast-paced world of American business. His curiosity, discipline, and ability to learn quickly allowed him to rise steadily through the ranks of industry. Carnegie recognized that steel would become the foundation of modern progress. As railroads expanded and cities grew, demand for strong, reliable materials increased rapidly. Carnegie invested in steel production at the right moment, focusing on efficiency, innovation, and large-scale output. His steel mills adopted new technologies and management practices that improved productivity and reduced costs. This allowed steel to be produced in greater quantities and at lower prices, making it possible to build railways, bridges, factories, and skyscrapers across the country. America's physical expansion was closely tied to the steel produced by Carnegie's operations. Rail networks connected regions, Bridges linked cities, and urban skylines began to rise. Steel became the backbone of modern infrastructure, and Carnegie's companies played a central role in supplying the materials that shaped the nation's landscape. His success demonstrated how industrial leadership could influence not only business markets, but also the physical development of a country. However, industrial growth during this era came with significant challenges. Factory work often involved long hours, intense labor, and difficult working conditions. Safety standards were limited, and workers faced daily risks. These realities became part of broader discussions about labor rights and workplace reform. Over time, the experiences of industrial workers contributed to public awareness and policy changes aimed at improving labor conditions. Carnegie's era helped spark conversations that would later influence labor protections and industrial regulations. In his later years, Andrew Carnegie shifted his focus from business to philanthropy. He believed that wealth carried a responsibility to serve society and that individuals who accumulated great fortunes should contribute to the public good. Carnegie devoted large portions of his wealth to building libraries, supporting education, funding cultural institutions, and promoting access to knowledge. Thousands of public libraries were established through his efforts, providing learning opportunities for communities across the United States and beyond. Carnegie's philanthropic philosophy emphasized education as a tool for personal and social advancement. He viewed knowledge as a pathway to opportunity, much like the one he had followed in his own life. His support for universities, research, and cultural organizations reflected a belief that long-term progress depended on informed and educated citizens. These contributions left a lasting legacy that extended far beyond his industrial career. Andrew Carnegie's life illustrates how industrial success and social responsibility became increasingly connected during the Gilded Age. His rise from immigrant worker to industrial leader symbolized the possibilities of the American economy, while his later philanthropic work highlighted evolving expectations about the role of wealth in society. Carnegie's influence can still be seen in the infrastructure he helped build and the institutions he supported. His story remains a key example of how the steel industry helped shape modern America and how economic power began to carry broader social responsibilities during this transformative era. Cornelius Vanderbilt and transportation expansion. Transportation played a central role in America's economic development during the 19th century, and Cornelius Vanderbilt emerged as one of the most influential figures in transforming how goods and people moved across the nation. Born into a modest family, Vanderbilt began his career in transportation at a young age, initially working with small boats and local shipping routes. Through persistence, strategic thinking, and an understanding of market demand, he gradually expanded his operations. At a time when waterways were the primary means of trade, Vanderbilt focused on improving efficiency, reducing costs, and increasing reliability. His shipping ventures helped connect coastal cities and inland markets, supporting commerce and regional growth. As technology advanced and the nation expanded westward, Vanderbilt recognized that railroads would become the future of transportation. He shifted his focus from shipping to rail networks, investing heavily in railroad infrastructure. Railroads transformed the American economy by allowing faster movement of raw materials, manufactured goods, and passengers over long distances. Vanderbilt's railroad systems linked major cities, industrial centers, and ports, creating an interconnected transportation network that strengthened national trade. His investments helped unify regional economies and made large-scale industrial production more practical. The expansion of railroads under Vanderbilt's influence reduced travel time, lowered transportation costs, and increased market access for businesses across the country. Farmers, manufacturers, and merchants all benefited from improved distribution systems. Railroads also played a key role in urban growth, as cities developed around major transportation hubs. Vanderbilt's control over important rail lines gave him significant economic power, allowing him to influence pricing, competition, and industry standards. His business strategies demonstrated how transportation infrastructure could shape broader economic systems. However, the rapid expansion of transportation during this period also exposed serious challenges. Railroad construction and operation required intensive labor, often under demanding and unsafe conditions. Workers faced long hours, physical risks, and limited protections. Accidents and labor disputes became common, drawing public attention to the human cost of industrial progress. These issues contributed to growing discussions about workplace safety, labor rights, and the need for government oversight. The transportation industry became one of the first areas where economic regulation and labor reform were seriously debated. Vanderbilt's era highlighted the balance between innovation and responsibility. While transportation networks accelerated economic growth, they also revealed the consequences of unchecked industrial expansion. Over time, public pressure and social awareness led to the introduction of regulations aimed at improving working conditions and ensuring fair competition. These early reforms laid the groundwork for future transportation laws and economic policies. Vanderbilt's influence extended beyond business operations to the structural development of modern economic systems. Transportation infrastructure became a foundation for national integration, enabling industries to operate at larger scales and reach wider markets. Railroads supported the growth of manufacturing, mining, and agriculture, making transportation a key driver of industrial success. Vanderbilt's role in building and consolidating transportation networks demonstrated how infrastructure investment could reshape an entire economy. Cornelius Vanderbilt's legacy reflects the importance of connectivity in economic development. His transition from shipping to railroads symbolized a broader shift in American industry and technology. By improving transportation efficiency, he helped create conditions for sustained national growth. At the same time, his era revealed the need for regulatory frameworks to address labor conditions and economic power. Vanderbilt's story remains an important chapter in understanding how transportation expansion became a cornerstone of modern economic systems, and how infrastructure development shaped the United States during a critical period of transformation. The Gilded Age and its long-term impact. By the end of the 19th century, the United States had been fundamentally transformed by rapid industrial growth. Large-scale businesses expanded across multiple industries, cities grew at an unprecedented pace, and new technologies reshaped how Americans lived and worked. The nation shifted from a primarily agricultural society to an industrial powerhouse, setting the foundation for its emergence as a global economic force. This transformation changed daily life, employment patterns, and economic expectations for millions of people. Industrial production increased efficiency and output, allowing goods to be manufactured and distributed on a scale never before seen. Transportation networks connected distant regions, communication improved, and urban centers became hubs of economic activity. While these changes created opportunity and prosperity, they also introduced new social and economic challenges that demanded attention. As wealth concentrated in large enterprises, public awareness of inequality and working conditions increased. Journalists, writers, and social observers began documenting the realities of factory labor, urban poverty, and economic imbalance. Their work helped inform the public and encouraged national conversations about fairness, responsibility, and the role of government. These discussions marked the beginning of modern investigative journalism and played a crucial role in shaping public opinion. Over time, this growing awareness led to policy changes aimed at improving labor rights, regulating markets, and ensuring fair competition. Laws addressing workplace safety, child labor, and business practices gradually emerged, reflecting a shift toward balancing economic growth with social protection. The Gilded Age also left a lasting institutional legacy. Many universities, research centers, libraries, transportation systems, and public foundations established during this era continue to operate today. These institutions supported education, scientific advancement, and cultural development, extending the benefits of industrial wealth beyond private ownership. Philanthropy became a defining feature of the period, as prominent industrial leaders contributed resources to public causes. These efforts helped expand access to education, healthcare, and knowledge, shaping future generations. At the same time, the era influenced how Americans understood economic responsibility. The concentration of wealth sparked debates about ethics, corporate power, and accountability. These debates remain relevant in modern discussions about large corporations and economic influence. The policies and regulatory frameworks that developed during and after the Gilded Age helped establish rules that continue to guide business practices today. The long-term impact of the Gilded Age can be seen in the structure of modern economic systems. Corporate organization, financial institutions, transportation infrastructure, and regulatory agencies all trace parts of their origins to this period. The lessons learned from rapid industrial expansion informed future economic planning and policy decisions. The era demonstrated both the potential of innovation and the importance of oversight. Understanding the Gilded Age provides valuable insight into how progress and responsibility must develop together. It highlights the need to balance ambition with fairness and innovation with social well-being. The changes that occurred during this time shaped the direction of the United States and influenced its role on the global stage. The Gilded Age remains an essential chapter in American history, reminding us that economic growth is most sustainable when paired with thoughtful regulation, social awareness, and a commitment to long-term public benefit.